call the meeting to order. Those who care to, please stand for an opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Mr. Cameron, if you would.
Well, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day and thank you for all that you do for us. And Lord, we just come to you tonight, and Lord, just ask you for your guidance, your wisdom and direction, and as we take on the matters of the city. And Lord, just guide and direct us in all that we do and all that we say. And just be with our city and continue to show your favor upon us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, to start tonight off, under Mayor's announcements, we have a couple of fine young men that we would like to recognize for contributions to the City of Republic. We have Nicholas Quinn and Colton Quinn both here tonight, and I would ask if Mr. Keeling would please come to the podium to fill us in on what they've done for our city.
Certainly, happy to do it. Steve, come up here as well. Okay. Steve Weber is here tonight. Steve is the park maintenance supervisor who has really worked hand in hand with the two outstanding young men to make this happen. Jennifer is not here tonight, so in her absence, and I don't want to get this wrong, she is prepared like she would only do this for me, so I am going to read it. But I want to take the time to not only obviously thank these guys for their terrific hard work, but to give them a chance to come up here and shake the mayor's hands, because what they have done is truly sensational. The Sensory Garden is adjacent to the community center, used almost daily by demographics of all age. And then of course the flag drop over adjacent to the Veterans Memorial has been utilized, and I'll speak to that just here in a minute. But let me read this first so I don't get in trouble by Jennifer, and then we'll go from there. So, in 2018, Mr. Nicholas Quinn approached our department about completing his Eagle Scout project by doing something for our park system. Working closely with Mr. Steve Weber here, the idea of a sensory garden at the community center became a reality. The layout, design, and features of the sensory garden were developed by Nicholas and included donations from Lowe's, Meeks, and Steiner's Greenhouse. Dave Butler, park maintenance worker, constructed the planter boxes using Nicholas' vision and design. Upon completion of the boxes, Nicholas brought in a crew of 10 to assist in planting the flowers and plants to engage all 5 senses: sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch. He also created the wooden identification tags for all the boxes. This garden has become a beautiful addition to the grounds of the Republic Community Center and has been visited by many. So at this time, that's Nicholas to come forward. Nicholas, I've got a plaque for you. Thank you, sir. Nicholas was the brains behind the sensory garden, and his brother obviously right behind the flag.
Takes like 40
All right, I have a plaque here that says 2019 Republic Citizen Award, Nicholas Quinn. Thank you for your vision, planning, and hard work to create a sensory garden at the Republic Community Center for our citizens to enjoy. So thank you very much.
All right, time for Nicholas's brother Colton. Earlier this year, Mr. Colton Quinn presented the idea of a U.S. flag drop box at the Republic Veterans Memorial to our park maintenance division as an Eagle Scout project. After noticing several old and retired flags around town, Colton researched where flags could be retired properly and respectfully and found very few options. As a result, Colton spearheaded this project, securing donations and designing all the graphics for the exterior of the drop box, which, by the way, is absolutely beautiful. Once the concrete pad was poured by our park maintenance division, Colton and around 8 other individuals came together to finalize the area of the drop box. Lowe's and Steiner once again donated flowers towards the project. The drop box has been very well received by our community and surrounding areas. Was even featured on a news story by KY3 earlier this year. More than 30 flags alone were dropped off in the first week of the drop box, and it continues to be utilized weekly. Yes. So at this time, Mr. Colton Quinn, would you come forward? By the way, this guy's a TV star. He did really good.
Ryan respects our personal space.
picture op. I would like to get Steve Weber in here. Steve was instrumental in making these things happen. So Nicholas and Colton, will you take your picture with Steve real quick? Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Let's get on it.
A little closer there, you know.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are you mom? So you have two boys to be very proud of. Not many kids in our community do as much as they have, and it also speaks to the Boy Scouts of America and the contributions they make to their city. We have our own Eagle Scout on the council, so he knows what it takes to go where they've been. So thank you very much for raising two fine boys, and thank the Boy Scouts of America for helping lead the way. All right, next we will move on to citizen participation. Anyone wishing to speak to anything not on the agenda, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak to anything not on the agenda? Seeing none, citizen participation is closed. I need a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. On to boards, commission, committee schedule. Please make note, the next city council meeting, August 27th, next week, will be held here at City Hall. But then the I scratched that out, September 3rd?
Yes.
The September 3rd meeting, we are going to cancel. We would have 3 meetings in a row, and we really needed to do the 2 meetings because of the tax levy.
That's correct.
So that's why we have the 2 meetings back to back. And then probably look for next year, that first meeting in September to be canceled as well. We have no old business or tabled items, so we will move on to new business. This time, I would like to open a public hearing of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, setting the 2019 property tax levies for the City of Republic, Missouri. What's that? Should be 2020. So do we need, I just reread the 2020, or? Is that okay? Okay. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Parks for an overview of this, please.
Okay. Every year, the City of Republic is required by state statute to set the property tax levy. Our city only collects a real estate property tax levy at this time. And basically, the state of Missouri prepares something called a pro forma, which they set a tax ceiling, a rate ceiling, so that according to RSMO, which is state statute 137.073.2, we cannot go over the 2% threshold to be in compliance with the Hancock Amendment. So last year, when the counties did the assessments, our evaluation went up, it increased, which is good for our area. However, because of this tax rate ceiling, we have actually going to decrease our tax levy this year. So I'll briefly outline how it happens and for the sake of the public hearing. So the City of Republic maintains 3 property tax levies. One is for the general fund, one is the parks and recreation, and the third is the street lighting, which actually is housed in the street fund. Greene County and Christian County assessors provided assessed valuation forms for the city and the state auditor's office. The city establishes these rates in accordance with what is already kind of approved in the pro forma by the state auditor. We double check the calculations, make sure it's correct, matches the valuations, and then we bring it to council, have a public hearing for any input. Inside of your package, you have the worksheet and supporting documentation that illustrates the change in assessed valuation compared to the 2018 tax year. We have adjusted assessed valuations, and they increased by $17,628,927, or approximately 9.5% or 5%. In calculating the tax levy, the valuations for new construction improvements and newly added territory, we then subtract back out from the assessed valuations, resulting in the adjusted tax valuation. So when you're looking through the documentation, wherever you see the adjusted, that means we subtracted back out the new growth. So reconciliation of 2019 levies in total will decrease by .0411. So the total levy collected by the city will be .5863 to offset the gain. Greene County, Christian County officials, they actually value the property for us. They do the assessments and they actually collect it for us. Because of that, they retain a 3% fee and Christian County a 4% fee for their portion. So the tax levy that we're proposing to pass tonight is, for the first read, is general revenue is .4119. For Parks and Recreation is .1110. For street lights is .0634. For a total city levy of .5863. So by state statute, this must be passed by and returned to them by September 1st. That is why we have moved the meetings today. So in our first read, we'll be asking for you to, City Council to approve the passage of the 2019 property tax levy. It states 2019, but it is actually, it's because it's collected in December for the following year. So the verbiage is correct, the 2019. With the state auditor's recommendation of .5863 for the total levy. The amount that will be reflected in the city's 2020 annual budget across the three funds is approximately $1,245,611.
Okay, thank you. As this is a public hearing, anyone wishing to speak against this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak against the item? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in favor of this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. Moving on now, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 19-14.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 7-0. Ms. Laura?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, setting the 2019 property tax levies for the City of Republic, Missouri.
Thank you. We've had an overview from Ms. Parks, so I would ask if there are any questions or discussion from Ms. Parks before we move on. Seeing none, remember this is a first read. You do have a shortened time because we have a meeting next Tuesday, so if you have any questions, please get with her between now and the next 6 days. Thank you. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 19-15.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Ms. Laura?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the City of Republic, Missouri to enter into an intergovernmental cooperative agreement with the Combined Ozarks Multi-Jurisdictional Enforcement Team, COMET, and for the Republic Police Department to participate as a member agency in COMET.
Thank you. Chief Sells.
Thank you. This is an agreement between the police department and the Common Drug Task Force. If it was approved, it would allow the two agencies to work together during drug investigations and to share information. We've had similar agreements with Comet in the past, but the Department of Public Safety is requiring them to get new and updated agreements with all member agencies. And we've reviewed the agreement and we would recommend approval.
Thank you. Any discussion, comments for Chief Sells? Will we be continuing on with the same relationship we've always had? We will not be assigning an officer to the task force, just
Correct.
so we really benefit.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. If there's nothing else, please see Chief Sells between now and this will be on for a second read at the next week's meeting. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 19-16.
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Ms. Laura?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental cooperative agreement with Greene County for road striping services.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Good evening. This is just a continuation of what we've been doing for the past couple of years with Greene County, for them to come in and stripe some of our routes. This year we asked for, we actually asked for a little more than what's in the agreement. They had to back off a few because they're just not wide enough for their spray rig, so about 6.7 miles, estimated cost is $9,100, of course, we're reimbursing and all actual costs incurred.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Mr. Nelson? I recall when this happened a couple of years ago, it was a significant savings.
Yeah, contracted, I think that would probably run in the 50,000, 60,000.
Wow. Good to have that relationship, absolutely. Okay, if you don't have any questions, Mr. Nelson is going to be at the podium for the next 7 days, it appears. So, if you have any questions, you can get with Mr. Nelson between now and the next meeting. I need a motion and a second for first reading of bill number 19-17.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Ms. Laura?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing a supplemental agreement with MoDOT and the Republic School District for the Route M Repmo Drive Roundabout Project.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
This is a supplemental agreement to our existing agreement with MoDOT and the school for the roundabout project. As we're wrapping that up, we found that the amount of property in the footprint of the roundabout that the school had to donate was larger than the original plan. So this goes back and assesses the value of the extra property at about $4,900. So MoDOT's going to reimburse them the $4,900. We're also a part of the agreement was to replace and relocate the original sign that we had to demolish. It is where the roundabout is currently located, and they were paid $22,350.98 for that relocation.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Nelson? Mr. Russell?
I'm sorry, maybe I'm not getting it. MoDOT is paying for this, we're not?
We're 50/50 cost share partners.
Okay.
And part of our 50 is 80% federal, for which we have a 20% local match.
Is that, well, I just did the math in my head, and now I'm worried I got it way wrong. So, like, we're paying 30% of it or something like that? Did I?
20% at half.
20%. Okay.
But also with this ordinance, when you read here, it's basically supplementing the original agreement, which
It
didn't
is.
allow MoDOT to pay the school back.
Yeah, we're still on, so the federal dollars accounted for the original programmed amount of the project. That was the 50/50 share, for which we used 80% federal, 20% local to make our 50% share. Anything that MoDOT incurred in the actual construction of the project, so change orders, overages, we're on the hook for 50% of that. We won't be able to use federal funds for that because it's not in the original program agreement with Federal Highway. So if, I think we're running in the neighborhood of about $30,000. So on the street fund, our paving amount that we budgeted this year, we're gonna pay $30,000 for the roundabout project, approximately in overages.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure I understand something. So the amount MoDOT is going to pay is more than they originally thought, which has a cap, which allows the Highway Transportation Commission to pay the remainder after what MoDOT is capped
Yes,
at $35,300.
yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. I will say it again, it's a first read, so if you have any questions, give it to Mr. Nelson before the next meeting. Moving on to, I need a motion and a second for bill number 19-18.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0 again. Mr. Nelson?
This agreement with MoDOT is actually what I would call a standing on-call agreement for utility relocation. So if they scope a project, for example, 174 and 60, they're trying to move that through 2020. We've got to start the utility relocation early, ahead of any actual agreements. So this is a standing on-call to have a mechanism in place for us to be reimbursed when they need our utilities moved.
Okay. Do we have any questions or Discussion? Okay, seeing none, first read. Any questions, give Mr. Nelson. Moving on to other business resolutions. I wouldn't go too far, Mr. Nelson, you're gonna be up pretty quick. The bill, or resolution number 19-R-29 has been withdrawn at the request of the applicant. It will not be considered by council, and to be clear, with that being withdrawn, they will have to start over, start the process over. Is that right, Mr. Tyson?
That's correct.
Back through planning and zoning, if they, whatever they submit. But as of right now, this is withdrawn, and it will not be back before council until it goes.
New application, which will go under staff review first.
Okay, so it starts at the beginning. And that was at the applicant's request. So now we'll move on to resolution number 19-R-30. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the purchase of one used New Holland tractor with boom mower attachment. Need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Have a motion and a second. Mr. Nelson.
This resolution's for the purchase, like you said, of a New Holland tractor with Tiger boom mower attachment. That's to replace our existing tractor and mower, which is inoperational at the moment. We made it most of the way through this year before we lost that piece of equipment. Currently, the repairs on it are estimated in 10,000 plus range, and we assess that piece of equipment to be probably 10,000 or less in value. So we had budgeted to replace this piece of equipment. We budgeted $60,000 with the intent to look at used equipment. So tractors set up just like this are relatively hard to find because they're mostly used by government agencies, and they're mostly kept for the entire life cycle. So we were able to locate probably 5 to 6 of those. 3 or 4 were really not in consideration. Of the 3 we looked at, we felt that this particular one, located in Mount Vernon, Ohio, was the best value to the city.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Joe?
Does 48.5 include transport delivery?
No, we're planning on sending our guys to pick it up. They will fit on our regular trailer. I'm gonna send Stacy and our guy that operates that piece of equipment, Ed, with the check, just to do a full inspection on site. I mean, we've seen video, pictures, talked to the dealer and everything, but we wanna do a full inspection before we actually purchase, and then we'll go back. We did get freight quotes, just in case for some reason we get there, we're not comfortable with that distance of travel or that piece of equipment on the trailer. I received 3 from just different freight providers that range from 1,000 to 1,500. We did get one local that would have to go there and back, and it was about 4,100. So
I'll do it for that.
Yeah. I'll join you.
I've got a truck and a trailer.
Yeah.
I can bring it home for 40.
And next, we will take up conflicts of interest. Any other questions, Mr.
On
Dykeman?
the transportation, is 1,500 more than what you figure it would cost for the labor and gas and everything to go up there and get it back?
It's close. Those were estimated, so I submitted the trip, the information about the weight and dimensions of the vehicle. Nothing was final contract value there. I wanted to see it and see what it
Sure.
would look like on our trailer before we make that decision. But they're fairly accurate.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
It's a 6-year-old piece of equipment, correct? It's 2013, is that right?
Yes.
Are there any outstanding warranties, anything like that, or that comes with it, or is it as is?
Yeah, it's as is. With 1,024 hours, just to speculate that it wasn't used much.
Yeah.
We mow probably, just in Republic, we probably mow 1,000 hours every year, I would say, pretty easy. So it looks to me like it was hardly used. I approached it like, if I was shopping for myself, that's the one that I would take out of one of your regular ones.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? And go ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Chairman.
just I want to make a point of interest in your in my admin report on page 8, I'm required, because I deem this as a sole source, because they could not find a competitive bid, because given the nature of finding a used vehicle, finding those parameters, and trying to find a way to come in under the budget, I'm required pursuant to our ordinance to provide you a written, or at least in writing, that I certified that this was a sole source, that there's no conflicts involved in this purchase, no attachments to that. So you will find that on page 8, but I want to make note of that for the minutes, that this was a sole source purchase. There was no competitive bidding, because I deemed it, and so did Andrew. And all of that justification is found inside the admin report for your review, that kind of justifies how he arrived at the decision he did and the due diligence that he and his staff put into this purchase. But I appreciate the work that you did to find a way to maximize and save the money, because I think a brand new one was significantly more expensive than our budget.
The new tractors, equipped and set up for us range from 100 to 120,000. So it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, we use it for just the summertime, so it just seemed the right thing to do. We get it used for that.
And the plan is to auction the old equipment off?
Yes, in as-is condition, just, we're not gonna make any of the repairs, just gonna send it to auction.
Okay. Right, any other questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to the finance report, Ms. Parks.
Tonight, you'll find in your finance packet, the sales tax numbers. As you probably guessed from Springfield and Greene County's news, we are still a little down. We were 2.86 down from the prior year. And overall, year-to-date, we're at 0.93% over last year. So we still are not flat, but it's not as high as we had wished. I know the questions that you would have is how does that affect our budget? So I am just letting you know that we've done a complete review with all the directors, looked at all their finances, and so far, everyone, we still are on target to not be over budget, even in light of this. We have in our interest accounts, one of the things, even though the sales tax receipts have been down, our interest we have been getting on our banking account has come in, and our different investment accounts has come in higher than anticipated and budgeted. So we're actually anticipating coming in over about approximately 50-60%, 50-60,000 over budget in that department, so that would help even out some of this loss. Also, we had a couple of vacancies due to staff changes in the police department. Those vacancies, that has helped our expense, though most of them are being filled now. And then also, we had a vacancy in the fire department. It's taken longer to get a position filled. So those are bigger expenses that have helped us still come in, even though the sales revenue might be down a little bit. On the cash report, if you flip over to that, you will see that our unrestricted reserve for this general fund is $2,947,032. So I wanted to show you guys that this is 38% of our general fund budget that we budgeted for the year. So it's still a really good reserve that we have there. But that includes the capital and debt in the budgeted amount. So if you take that out, the operating reserve ratio that we have right now in the general fund is approximately 40%. So it's still a really good, a little bit over, 3.5 months reserve. The total budget, including capital and debt budgeted for the year, as you know from the budget, was $21,276,000. So overall, the unrestricted cash reserve that we have currently across all the funds for the city is still 36%. So I just wanted to it's been a while since I gave you where we are on our ratio, the operating ratio. So I also wanted to give you a little bit of a capital improvement project for the program that we passed, where we are on some of our bigger projects before we go into the rest of the financials. Right now, it's exciting, the police department roof is finally being replaced. As a reminder, that was being funded out of the transfer from our capital, reserve. So the sales tax issue does not really affect that. The phone system is on hold for right now until we do further analysis. The 3 police vehicles, you've seen that at council were approved, so we're waiting for those to come in approximately another couple months. Oakwood and Hines, I know you guys probably want to know where we are budgetarily, you know where we are on the physical side, but it's nearing completion. We are expecting most of the reimbursements to come in this year, and we have just submitted $166 reimbursement request from the federal government for our 80%. The project is at 73.91%. So originally, the contracted amount was for $2,097,013. And as of our last pay request that was submitted, it was at $1,549,988, so in the dollar terms. And then, of course, as Andrew mentioned a little bit earlier this evening, the Retmo roundabout, we do have an overage. We're expecting that to be approximately $30,000 out of our street fund. So I just wanted to touch on a few of our projects, because in light of the budgetary discussion, you might be wondering where we are on some of those bigger projects. Last but not least, on our budget to actual, I gave you the summary, again, sheet that summarizes what is basically in the rest of the reports. So the general fund, the revenue, we're at 63% for the year. This point in time, we should be approximately 58.8%. So we're still slightly above. Our expenditures are at 54.7% for the general fund, so we're still below if we're hitting the target, so there is some savings there. The street fund, we are at 88% of our projected revenue. That is mostly reimbursements for that STP project that we have. We're at 78.4% of revenues. Our water fund, we're at 67.4% of revenue, so even though we had some issues initially that we brought to council with our water and wastewater fund, we have not seen a big dip in our revenues for the year. The expenditures on the water fund are at 59.4%, so still underneath the revenue. Our wastewater is at 61% of revenue for the year, and our expenditures, we've kept them a little bit lower at 46%. And I would like to remind you that we had budgeted that last bond payment to pay off the 1999, and I believe we're going to go forward with that in the next month or two. We're just probably going to wait till October just to make sure everything is coming in okay. And then the Parks and Rec Fund, I know that's the one fund that we've been kind of watching closely because we made that bond payment at a different time that sort of made them have a larger loss. They're at 61% with their revenue. That's even after the weather that we've been having with the aquatic center. And they're at 71% of their expenses, but as you know, they're mostly a summer program, so those expenses are not going to increase at the same pace for the rest of the year. That will build back up their revenue, their net income. And then last but not least, I'm going to touch on the capital improvement fund. The revenue's at $395,649, so that puts the expenses are at 36.54%. And we have the police cars, they'll be coming out of that fund in the next couple months, as well as we're starting on the animal shelter. So those are on track and we budgeted for those. So at that time, I included the fund balance report for you as well and the balance report. That's all I have.
Thank you. Council, have any questions or discussion regarding the financial report? Okay. The only question, chief sales on the vehicles that were ordered, those did include the new strike package, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That was the only question I was just wondering. Thank you. Okay, moving on to reports from staff. Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Debbie, I want to thank you for your work on the budget this year. It's been a interesting dynamic. I'm still not convinced. I'm still struggling with the understanding of why the fluctuation on the revenue side, because we're not seeing a decline in necessarily the involvement that's going on in the community, but at the same time watching our finances. So Debbie's done an excellent job. Even after we had the first concern where I mentioned it at a council meeting, just with the way the numbers were going, it still causes you a little bit of time for pause to say, we still need to make sure in case there is a change. And so Debbie's been working on that for months, analyzing that, keeping track of the expenses. And so I appreciate the work that she's done to provide number one, myself data, so that we can make decisions, and that of the staff. But also the second point is to the staff that have made those cuts or made those provisions to hold off. But to our public safety, it's difficult that we're hanging on by those numbers because public safety is not hiring. And so those are some situations that we're gonna have to continue to work on. Because I know, Chief, all of you have held off to help create those savings that we're keeping to stay under the budget. So while we're staying under budget, how we're getting there is because there's not public safety on the street. So we're gonna have to continually work on that. But I appreciate the staff, I appreciate your patience and the positions that we've had open, but we will fill those positions. But I think it will create some stuff that we're gonna have to discuss, some challenges in this budget, the upcoming budget that we're gonna have to talk about. Just a report, I made a mention several months ago after, I wanna say it was April, perhaps we made the last adjustments to our residents regarding utility billing. I mentioned that I would work on trying to get some financial consideration back, or some sort of consideration back from Tyler. And we have agreed to, initially it was a $30,000 refund. So I was like, anything that we can get would be very helpful. But in return, what we did is they gave us a $30,000 credit that we can apply to our 2020 budget, which is actually the same as cash to me. It was good for them, it worked for us. I appreciate Tyler's willingness to even have that discussion, because technically they're under contract. There are errors and omissions, things that they openly, admitted one of the errors on the last billing cycle that dropped to zero, that created the challenge. So for us to get, for them to credit us $30,000 back in 2020 is a real help, and I appreciate their willingness to do that when I technically don't believe they had to. So just wanted to report out that they did move towards that, and we also were to, one of the softwares that they provided that just was not providing us the benefit that was originally planned. We've diminished that contract, it's been amended. I've signed that this week, and so we're ready to move forward with them, and that relationship is still very much intact, but I wanted to report that. They've been a great partner, because a lot of the software that they've implemented has done tremendous work. But that utility billing software, I'm glad that season to some extent passed, because it was tumultuous. But they owned it. They helped own it, so I appreciate the work that was done there. If you get a chance, drive down Highway 174. As you recall, we purchased the property. I don't remember what the name of that property was, but as you're going out of town for the new animal shelter. And this is what I love about the staff and what they're doing is they recognize the value of our budget and maximizing every tax dollar. That building needs remodeling, and so when they went to do the initial bids on that project, it was substantially higher than the budget we have for that project. So the city staff themselves began to do the demo work on that property to help cut the cost. They're preparing the pad and the subgrade behind the area of that. So we're utilizing city workers and city street crews and public works department staff to get that site ready. So if you go out there and you see it stripped down, a lot of that was done by city workers. It was all done by city workers. And so all the site cleanup and the old apartments that were there that used to be, they're gone. So that entire site, if you haven't had a chance, that staff has cleaned that up and cleaned that site. I mean, it's still a work in progress, but the bids go out. I believe we received the bids September 3rd or 5th. Does that sound correct? So looking forward to getting that project off the ground. So I anticipate we'll have an announcement coming up pretty soon, just to kind of celebrate. That was a project that was promised in the capital improvement sales tax in August of 2017. Looking forward to getting that project off the ground. Just an update on the Highway 60 study. So originally when that study was commissioned, or we was talking about looking at that corridor and MoDOT and Federal Highway partnering together, the initial proposal that the city and myself provided to them was that the city was like, hey, listen, we want to put skin in the game to get this project going. We offered $50,000 as an initial starting point. So basically they came back and said, we're taking care of all of it. But when the bids came in on the project, it was $500,000 instead of $400,000 to do the project. So you will see it. We budgeted for this in general. So we made a budget amendment. We're going to come back with a budget amendment recommending that we participate in that traffic analysis because we want to we don't want them to cut scope or part of that project. Like, hey, we'll give you a $400,000 project when it requires $500,000. So we've again initiated the idea that we will partner in with $50,000. OTO is coming up with some funds, but it's anticipated that project will take 8 to 10 months. But why that is important is that study, when we're looking at this, the one that even the applicant that withdrew this evening, that corridor is so vital to us in doing that study. So it's going to be very challenging to do much development along there until that study is done. And but we believe that we need to be a partner to that study to make sure it gets done and done the way that is beneficial to us and to the region. So just want to make you aware of that, for future reference. When you see that change in a budget, it's something that we already anticipated and budgeted for. We probably cut that price down when we saw that we weren't going to do it. Now they've asked us to, for consideration to partner, and I believe that we should. Lastly, so we had a meeting today, and I just want to bring it to your attention simply for future discussion, because I anticipate that you're going to hear more about it. Is on several occasions, at least in my first 3 years with the city, there have been several occasions, I want to say several being 3 or 4, where property boundaries between the city of Republic and the city of Springfield come into somewhat of a conflict. I wouldn't call it conflict, but there was an agreement in 2006 and 7 where Republic and Springfield entered into a settlement agreement. There was a lawsuit filed in relationship to the Brookline consolidation, whereby the two cities were kind of aiming for that property. And so basically in that settlement, it established boundaries and established criteria and certain things that are going on, and so, or how business is done. So if we have utilities in a certain area, Springfield cannot connect or come into our service area. We cannot go into Springfield's without written consent. So we're in the process of working with developments where those things have been in conflict. And so we're going to begin to engage in that discussion of how to open that discussion up and have a dialogue with how to either revise those agreements, because we're coming into conflict where we have utilities in an area, but where they want to be in Republic, but connecting to our utilities may be 1,000 feet away, but they're in a Springfield district, where Springfield may never get to them, and so vice versa. It could happen with Springfield as well. But I anticipate that agreement in 2007 was not completely without contention and some challenges. So bridging that gap, so we're going to begin to have some dialogue with the city of Springfield, and I believe there's a willingness and an openness to have that discussion that will be in the betterment of not just both communities, but for our region. But I anticipate bringing something to you it will not be something that's done overnight, but I want you to be prepared for that discussion, that what this is about. I will be providing you a copy of that settlement agreement. I would anticipate some have never even seen it. I was not even aware of it until about a year ago, whenever we ran across this first development, because one of the pieces of this agreement on US 60 says that we will work in partnership with Springfield to restrict access or create limited access to 60. So there is an agreement we've established. So some of the developments that we're talking about, we're almost somewhat, I wouldn't say prohibited, but that agreement says we have to protect the interest of 60 into Springfield, and vice versa. We cannot do things to restrict it. So we need to, and so that's a lot of the discussion that kind of, when you start thinking about the development along US 60 with MT Farms or anyone else, that comes into place. So I think there's some work that needs to be done there. And I just do that just for the sake of, for the public's information, like how those boundaries established. We don't know who decided it would be Springfield and who decided to be Republic. So we're gonna get together and have that discussion. But I just wanted to make you aware in advance, because I anticipate bringing something to you in the future that'll address that was not outlined in my goals for 2019 and 20. But we have development that's wanting to come in Republic right now. It's being held up, waiting for a decision. And so we have to act, because I believe it's in the best interest of the region, not just Republic, but for our region. And I think that we need to act in good faith to try to make that happen for them. And that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. And it's nice to have someone working on that, because, I mean, we would all implore the city of Springfield, as we would the city of Republic, to do what's right regionally, so that these businesses could come in, so they're not caught up in this maddening red tape of poor agreements that were drawn up before anybody knew what the landscape was going to look like. So we'll make sure that Springfield knows how serious we are about making sure that agreement comes into play and affects and benefits those who want to open up business and contribute to the community. I want to say congratulations to Connie Moeller. She retired from the City of Republic after serving 24 years. Wasn't it 24 years with the City of Republic? That's just a long time to work anywhere. So she's seen a lot of city administrators and mayors and councils and just employees in general, and she's made a great contribution. I think it was said the other night that her fingerprint can be seen all over the city, and what she's done behind the scenes to help everyone. So congratulations to Connie and her retirement. The sales tax receipts from the state of Missouri, I don't think we're still totally convinced that there's not some kind of an issue with some delayed reporting. So my plan is to get a hold of the governor's office in the next week or so. I've spoken with Mr. Cameron about this, and try to get some help, some relief from the governor's office to just see, let's sit down and figure out what is the problem and is there something we can do to fix it so that it's more regular and the cities can plan ahead months rather than 1 month at a time waiting to see how those tax receipts are gonna rebound or not. And then the last thing is Jared, the mud run, right?
Saturday.
This Saturday at, out in Brookline.
Yeah, it starts at 8:30 a.m. We anticipate anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200, and it has turned into a complete regional event, which we're so proud of. So if you name the city 100 miles from here, we got people coming in, and we got people from other states too. So it's really turning into a great event.
Yeah, so 1,100 or 1,200 people, that's awesome. Okay, anything else from council? Anybody have anything? Mr.
I
Jones?
have a question. I'm gonna put Chief Sells on the spot here real quick. Just with the recent opening of the roundabout, and there was a lot of opinions on both sides on its, if it was a valid choice. Have there been any incidents that you're aware of, significant or otherwise?
Couple accidents,
Yeah.
big motorcycle.
Had one today?
I had one today with a motorcycle trying to cut through cars, and he ended up crashing out.
Okay.
Wasn't an effect of the roundabout, it was just,
Way he's driving.
okay.
And the other one was also, I think it was contributed to some alcohol.
Great.
Mr.
Not
Mayor.
great about that.
Yeah.
Clarify that.
But we have fielded complaints about the westbound traffic yielding, or being able to turn left onto ZZ, and it's actually staging all the way back in through the roundabout in the evening. So I do know that Andrew's been working with MoDOT about changing the timing of that signal.
Anything else from the council? Anyone have anything? Okay. At this point, has to go into executive session. No further action other than adjournment. Announcing adjournment by the mayor shall take place after an executive session that is scheduled as the last matter on the agenda unless otherwise stated on the agenda or as allowed per RSMO 610.02. Tonight we'll be discussing RSMO 610.021.3, hiring, firing, promoting, or disciplining personnel, which is a closed session, closed vote, and closed record. I need a motion and a second to go into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, roll call vote.
Councilmember Dykeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Bashirs?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Franklin?
Aye.
Councilmember Russell?
Aye.
Councilmember Self?
Motion carries 7-0. We will adjourn regular meeting in, let's say, 5 minutes. We will get back together for executive session. I just gave 5 minutes.
Give it 3 minutes. I say we're doing 3.
I'm not moving.